Welcome, everybody. I'm very happy to have our guest Francesca Appiani from Milan here, from the Alessi Museum, to talk about issues that will be of interest to all of you as students, and I know that some of our teachers are really interested to look and hear about it. And this Italian Design Day is something we tried to manage last year, but we got a cancelling in the last minute, so we're really happy to have you here. We're also very happy to have guests from the Italian Cultural Institute in Oslo and the Ambassador of Italy, Alberto Colella, and I would like to invite you to say a couple of words.
Thank you. So, good dag, alle sammen. Welcome, alle sammen. My name is Alberto Colella. I'm the ambassador of Italy. Today we have two ambassadors, actually. We have Ambassador Francesca, who will speak about Italian design, and you have Ambassador Alberto, and the ambassador of Italy in Norway and Iceland. Today we celebrate the Italian Design Day, so every year we try to organize a day of initiatives and studies on the Italian design. Italian design is quite well known in Norway. I used to say that being an Italian ambassador in Norway is not difficult because the image of Italy is so positive, so happy. Italy here in Norway is the country of the sun, of the art, of the archaeology, of the culture, and of the design. Italian design is quite popular in Norway, so this is one of the reasons why I'm very proud to be here, and I'm very proud to introduce to you for this celebration of the Italian Design Day, Francesca Appiani, a well-known expert from a number of companies. We talked before over lunch, and I realized that she's doing several things in the field of design. Mainly, she's the responsible of the Alessi Museum and of other things, and she will talk about all the rest of the activities. Francesca, the floor is to you. Thank you.
We can start from the movie, the official movie. This is the movie of today, the Italian Design Day. And they asked me to start with this movie.
Do we need sound?
This is the topic of the day.
I still have one of those typewriters at home.
I've got the coffee maker because it's an Alessi product. The Ossidiana. So, buongiorno everybody. Let's talk in Italian. No? It's the same because my English is very close to Italian, so I think that for me it's the same. So, when I started to talk with Peter about today, we tried to select some topics linked to my work, hoping that these topics are interesting for you. And all of them are linked to my work. They are different, but at the same time coherent with my work. Today is the day of the Italian design, so I would like to mainly talk about Italian design, but at the same time I work for Alessi. Alessi is an Italian company specializing design objects. I hope that you know this company, or you know some objects produced by Alessi. And so as I'm in charge of its museum, I would like to talk about the museum of Alessi and the history of Alessi. So the topic are, briefly, the history of Alessi, because at the beginning Alessi wasn't an Italian design factory. In Italy we've got some design companies that since the beginning they were design companies. Alessi wasn't. We've got, like, for example, Ducati. Ducati at the beginning, do you know Ducati? Mm. Please, let me know if I tell you a name that you don't know. Okay. Otherwise, I think that you know. Okay, Ducati at the beginning was a company specialized in radios. They produce radios. And then they changed completely the products, and then after, during the end of the 40s and the beginning of the 50s, they started to produce motorbikes. And more or less happened the same with Alessi. Not exactly the same, but more or less the same. Talking about the Alessi history, I would try to introduce you some elements peculiar of the Italian design companies, about their design approach. And then I will come back to Alessi, and I would like to talk about something really peculiar of Alessi. And then I introduce my work at the Museo Alessi, and more in general, I would like to explain you how you can know the Italian design through the company museums and archives. Because in Italy, we've got many museums and archives open inside the company. Ferrari, Ferragamo, Molteni, Carte, Cassina. They've got archives or museums. And this phenomenon is not really well known outside Italy. And I would like to show you this phenomenon. And I would like to show you some unexpected places in which you can find interesting documents about the Italian design. For example, at the Barilla archive. Do you know Barilla? They produce pasta, but in their archive they've got some beautiful documents, interesting documents about the design. So let's start. Okay, the history of Alessi. At the beginning, Alessi was a very small factory, and this was the initial factory, opened in 1921 by Giovanni Alessi. It was a very small factory. They produced objects for the table. They use soft metal like brass, pewter. And at that time, the name of Alessi was FAO, Fratelli Alessi Omegna. Fratelli means brother. Alessi brother in Omegna. Omegna is the name of the small town by a small lake in the north of Italy, in which Giovanni and his brother opened Alessi. Omegna is 100 kilometers far from Milan, quite close to the border with Swiss. Have you ever been in Milan? Yes, it's not very far. You arrived in Malpensa. Alessi is not very far from Malpensa, just to have an idea about the place in which Alessi was born. Second stop. During the 40s, Alessi became a real industry. So we've got the first change from workshop to industry. There is a second generation, the two sons of Giovanni Alessi. They transformed the father workshop in an industry. They started to use stainless steel. And during this period, Alessi is a company specialized in objects for bars, restaurants, hotels. The design is very minimal. They are very focused on functionality, durability, because they are the values important for that business. They changed the name, Alpha. The logo is an eagle. The meaning of the name is again Alessi Fratelli, Alessi's brother, because again we've got two brothers, which competencies are complementary. And also in the third generation, we've got two brothers, Michele and Alberto. Alberto joined the company in 1970. And he is the person who transformed the company in a design company. He started to think about objects like, we can say, subjects. He thought that it was time to change, it was time to start to consider the objects not only tool, not only from the point of view of the functionality, but also as a container of emotion, poetry, feelings. And so he started from these kind of ideas. Now they are very simple, very well known, but at that time, especially in Omenia, in this very small town, aren't very well known. Alberto thought that when we would like to have an object, for sure we consider the functionality. But the functionality is not the only reason why we decide to have an object. First of all, we usually, bless you, use objects as a signs in order to communicate something about ourselves, something about our status, something about our style. For example, think about fashion, it's very clear. There is a socialist, a French socialist, Baudrillard, who studied, maybe some of you know him, but who studied very well this aspect, this phenomenon. And, but these three values, functionality, style, status, are not the only values that we consider. There is another value, the poetic value. We think, Alessi and in general the Italian design companies, we think that when we would like to have an object, we would like to satisfy our needs of art and poetry. And this is one of the first important aspects of the approach of Italian companies, design companies. This approach is completely different from the approach of the mass production industry. They use design, but as a simple, as a slave, as a simple marketing tools. They reduce design as a simple marketing tools in order to embellish, in order to make, to enhance the shape of the objects and push people to buy them. But this is a very consumistic approach. And this is not real design. We can say it's a fake design. And what is the result? That we are surrounded by anonymous objects without any emotion and feeling, any poetry. if it works, I can show you. Okay. For example, compare these. I don't know the company that produced this coffee maker, but this coffee maker is designed by Aldo Rossi. Aldo Rossi.
I have one at home.
Wow. And do you have this also?
No, but
No.
I know the model.
And the corkscrew of Mendini?
The one on the right,
Yes, of course.
with the Pinocchio. Ah, yeah, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. If you compare, this is designed by Aldo Rossi. Aldo Rossi was an architect, an Italian architect, who started to work as a designer. And he started with Alessi to work as a designer. And I'm sure that if you compare these two designs, you understand what I try to communicate. This is just a shape. It's a sort of imitation of design. It's okay, a nice color, nice shape, but just to push you to buy it. This is full of emotion. This shape of the cup remember you the churches, and it's full of culture. It's full of Italian culture, but artistic culture. And we can say the same with all of the other objects that I showed in this slide. I put this phrase. This is a phrase of Alberto Alessi. I found this phrase in an article, and I think that it's very clear to summarize what I'm talking about. A true work of design must move people, convey feelings, bring back memories, surprise, transgress. It must make us feel that we are living our one single life. This is the goal of design, but in general the goal of every production, on my opinion, also art production. And design is a form of art. Exactly. Link with that is the status of Italian Design Factory. We are art mediators, because the Italian Design Factory, the approach is completely different from the mass production factories. We don't think that design is just a tool of marketing. It's this is a definition of Alberto Alessi, is an overall philosophy. The activity of the Italian design factories consists of a mediation between the international creativity and the desires of people. International creativity, this is another aspect, another peculiar element of Italian design. The Italian design is Italian, but at the same time, the designers are international. From the 70s, at the beginning, the history of Italian design, of course, started from a small group of architects like Gioponti, Albini, Castiglioni, Sozzas, and they were Italian. But since the 70s, the most part of Italian design factories started to work to collaborate with foreign designers. And this is another interesting aspect. When you see an Italian objects, design objects, I think that you recognize it as an Italian design objects, but at the same time could be made by, sorry, a not Italian designer. I put here some sample of this art mediation, and from a classic. Anna Castelli Ferriero in 1967 designed this furniture, and consider that in the 60s, Cartel, the company that made this object, was very brave, because at that time plastic wasn't a material for furniture. Now we've got many furniture in our houses made in plastic. But at that time, it was very strange, and they were extremely innovative. For that reason, for example, you can find some movies made in the 60s and about fantascientific movie, and the scenography were made with Cartel furnitures, because they were so in the future. Okay, however, another aspect linked to this activity of mediation, we are borderline. The borderline is a metaphor, of course. It's a line that you can see that divides what is innovative, but the people are ready to accept to have in the house, and what is innovative but people doesn't want. You know the acronym MAIA, most advanced yet acceptable. This is the meaning of borderline. The Italian design factories usually work very, very close to this line. But this is a risky activity, because the risk is that you trespass this line and then you've got a flop. I put two objects of Alessi, and one is a flop. I think that you know this, I presume, and you don't know that this, because this was a flop. Both of them were designed in the 90s by Philip Stark. These arrived very, very close to the borderline and shift a little bit in advance the borderline. It was really innovative, but Maya, people accept this not, and was a flop. We removed from the catalog after a few years. And this is another important aspect of the activity of Italian design factory. Third, the transgression. Do you remember Alberto Alessi said a real design object must be transgressive? In which sense transgression? In industry, we have to respect some rules. In general, we can divide this rule in three groups. First, technical functional rules. I put as an example, the Gioconti superleggera. This kind of rule governs the physical, the material producibility of the object. The Italian design factories usually stress the technology, stress the material performances. For example, Cartel with the plastic polymers. The Gioconti superleggera, it seems an absurd from the technological point of view. However, it works, and it's still in production. Yes. Second group of rules, socio-economic and marketing rules. Usually, the Italian design company, as I presume you understand, don't care about marketing, don't believe in marketing. And I put this kettle designed by Michael Grace for Alessi as an example of that, because I know the story. The story was that at the beginning of the 80s, the most important market of Alessi was Italy. And in Italy, we drink coffee, not tea, and not American coffee. However, Alberto Alessi decided to put in production this kettle. And it became a bestseller also in Italy. People usually buy it and put in the living room as a sculpture. They didn't use it till now, they didn't use it. But thanks to that, we've got these objects. And I knew that the commercial department told Alberto, no, don't put in production, could be a flop. Because, okay, we can have some, how can I say, we can sell some kettles in the States, in the north of Europe, but our most important market is Italy, and Italian people doesn't want kettle. However, they want kettle. Third, aesthetic and communicational rules. They govern the understanding of the objects from the people. And I put this piece, the Sacco armchair. It was designed by these three boys, and they were almost students. And they went to Zanotta, to Mr. Zanotta. At that time, Zanotta was a big company, design company, and they arrived with this idea. They were students. And he thought that this was a beautiful armchair, but was very, very far from the usual shape of armchair. And again, we've got an object that is still in production and that people like very much. Now it's really, really copied. I saw, when I prepared this slide, I tried to find a picture of the real Sacco Zanotta, and I found a lot of fakes. Okay. How Alessi became an Italian design company? Thanks to the designers, of course. Thanks to the collaboration with many different designers. At the beginning, when Alberto joined the company, the first collaboration was with the so-called maestros, like Ettore Sozzas, Castiglioni, Richard Sapper. Have you ever seen these products? Because I tried to put some of the most popular objects produced by Alessi during the 70s. And thanks to this collaboration, Alberto started to reflect about the role of the industry, the role of an industry that produces objects. The elements that I showed you before are a result of a reflection starting in the 70s. In the 80s, the collaboration, we've got the collaboration with not only designers but also architects. Among them, Michael Graves and Aldo Rossi. And thanks to Alessi, they realized that they were talented designers. And in the 90s, the group of designers became bigger and bigger and bigger. Alessandro Mendini described this phenomenon inside the Alessi history using eclecticism, this term. Now in our catalog, and the phenomenon started in the 90s, in our catalog we've got more than 300 different designers, different because of the age, the culture, the background. We've got designers, but we also have got architects, cartoonists, fashion designers. In the catalog, not now, but in the past, we had a product designed by Baianino, musician. This is another element of our approach. Do you remember art mediator? We mediate from the creativity. I didn't say from the expression of design, creativity. We believe that we can translate the language of an architect, the language of a cartoonist or musician in an object. And this is the work of an art mediator. And this is an element peculiar of Alessi, metaprogetto, meta-projecting. When we start a project, we start to think about for which kind of consumer society we would like to produce. If our object can help to develop the society that we wish to have in the future. And the famous, not consumistic approach that I mentioned before. An example of metaprogetto is the Tea and Coffee Piazza project, started in the late 70s and presented in 1983. The idea was try to work with architects, not with designers, and Alessi invited a group of international designers and asked them to design a tea and coffee set. They choose the tea and coffee set, first of all, because the tea and coffee set is a very traditional topic inside the applied art. But at the same time, because we think that the architect could find something familiar in a tea and coffee set, because you can consider the tea and coffee set as a small architecture. The tray is like a square. For that reason, the title, Tea and Coffee Piazza. Piazza in Italian means square. The tray is like a square. The teapot, the coffee pot, the other elements are small buildings. So it was easier for them to translate in another scale their language. And this is the result. And was a very important experience for Alessi. After that, Alessi started to collaborate with Aldo Rossi and Michael Grace. And Michael Grace, we can say, fell in love with the topic of the tool for tea and coffee. And a few years after this project, he designed a kettle with the red bird. And for that reason, yes. And for that reason, if it works, 20 years after, with a new generation of architects, Alessi repeated the experience. Again, Alessi left the architect completely free to express their idea, and this is the result. You can see Greg Lynn, Zaha Hadid, the Photo System, David Chipperfield, Jean Nouvel, Toyo Ito, and if you see this set, you can recognize their language. However, the scale is completely different. However, the product is completely different. And And again, after this project, Alessi started some collaboration, for example, with Zaha Hadid or David Chipperfield, or the Japanese duo Sana. But how can I say, we embodied a meta project, because meta project is a sort of cultural scenarios. Is a mix of ideas, experiences, feelings, imaginarium, etc. And every time we create something, we write, we paint, we design, we put our meta project in our work. So, in some cases, Alessi started from a singular meta project. In some cases, build up the meta project, like the meta project of Tea and Coffee Piazza and Tea and Coffee Towers. They reflect about the relationship between design, architecture, urbanistic, etc. In other cases, Alessi started from a designer who embodied a particular meta project. This is the story of a tray. Alberto Alessi would like to have a tray designed by the meta project of Philip Stark. Philip Stark didn't design the tray for 1 year, another year. And at a certain time, Alberto received this mail. Philip Stark was in Italy, was on holiday. Capraia Island is an island in Tuscany, and he was eating a dish of moscardini. Moscardini is a kind of small octopuses, and we usually eat them with lemon. You know, with Italian people at the end we talk about food. Okay, and so we presume that while he was squeezing lemon on the dish, he started to think about this lemon squeezer. And then he started to sketch some version and sent this project to Alberto Alessi. He received that and gave it to the technical department. And they started to think about how to put in production. This was the first version that they took in consideration. At a certain time, they realized that the line, the spiral line, didn't work, and they changed the direction of the line in this way, and it works. Oh. Wow. It depends on the point of view. For example, who thinks that it doesn't work? No. This reminds me. Some years ago in Paris, there was an exhibition dedicated to Philip Stark, and he wrote some stories about the project. And about this project, he said, he wrote, I know that my enemy usually say that it doesn't work, but they are wrong, because it's perfectly functional. They are wrong because the real function is a starter of conversation. And it's an evidence that my enemies are talking about the functionality of this lemon squeezer, so it works. And then he continued to describe his work. At the end, he said, however, if you want, you can use it also to squeeze a lemon. So what happened? That Alberto continued to ask a tray from the meta project of Stark. And at the end, he received, but after 2 years, he received his tray. The name of Voila Voila is because when, after 2 or 3 years, Stark arrived in Alessi and gave his project, said, Voila Voila, your tray. This is and then the name is Voila Voila. Third approach in order to create a meta project. This is a choral approach and was created inside the Centro Studi Alessi. Centro Studi is Alessi Research Center, was open at the beginning of the 90s, and the chief was Laura Polinoro, a young semiologist, and was open in order to start to work with young designers. Because at the end of the 80s, Alberto Alessi thought that it was time to open Alessi to young designers. So I started to work with universities or group of young designers. And this approach is different from the first two that I described. In this case, the meta project is prepared with various professionists, with the designers, but also with professionists specialized in, we can say in general, in the relationship between objects and people. An example of this approach is the workshop Feminist Follows Fiction. At a certain time, Alberto Alessi and Laura Polinaro started to think about objects that can be subjects, that can be that can have a link with people, an emotional link with people, that can become member of the family, like little creature. And they started this reflection with some other professionists. There was an anthropologist, an architect, an expert of food marketing. And while they were thinking about these kind of objects, they knew the works of Franco Fornari and Winnicott. Donald Winnicott, they were psychologists, and they studied the unconscious relationship, unconscious emotional relationship between kids and objects, and then adult and objects. And at the end, they involved in the reflection this group of designers. And the result is that, this kind of objects. And the pictures that you see were shot by Giacomo Giannini, a young photographer, and he described the status of these objects. They are not simply objects, they are subjects. As Laura Polinaro wrote, the consumer object is elevated to a poetic and imaginative structure, capable of touching individuals' emotional charts. This was the point of this project. Another project was started from anthropology. The anthropologists studied that in every culture we've got object for the offering to the gods, to the friends. We've got different rituals, we've got different objects, but in every culture we've got the offering objects. And so they invited 200 designers. All of them are women. Why? Because in the history of design, we didn't have a lot of space. So they decided to open Alessi to women designers. And at the end, there were 100 of them. And they work on this topic. The title was Memory Containers. Every designer was invited to think about their memories, the personal memories, the cultural, the country memories. And if you close your eyes and think about an offering gesture, which kind of object you've got in your hand? I presume different objects, something linked to your childhood, something linked to what you saw when you study at the university, something linked with the house of your grandmother. And this is the reason why you see we've got a different typology. We've got baskets, we've got trays, we've got box, we've got, I don't know in English the name of that, to warm up. When you prepare food, they put, just to take the food, to keep, uno scaldavivande, come si dice?
Som holder maten varm.
Thank you. This is the word. Okay. Any questions? Because I'm about to change topic and start to talk about the museum. Not exactly change the topic, but any questions? Everything was clear in spite of my Italian, my English? Okay. I would like to give you a break with a very, very short movie about Alessi. And in this movie, you can see the process of an object from the production department to the showroom, to the museum, to the shop. Thank you. So, the research that I describe produce a lot of physical material, a lot of prototypes, samples, text. And at a certain time, Alberto Alessi decided to have a place in the company where himself and the technical department can find this material in order to, we can say, recycle, use as references. And so he decided to have a sort of museum, but we organized this museum as an archive of products, drawings, dossiers, etc. And these are the facts and figures of our museum. It's not very big, but it's really full of objects. And you saw in the movie, the layout, and they are our most important or main visitors. So this is the technical department of Alessi, and it used also by Alberto Alessi and the chief of the technical department. Every time there is a meeting with the designers during development of a project, every time in which they need to use the objects that we've got in the archive. In our work, I think that you know that it's really useful having a physical object, a physical sample when we discuss about a possible solution or impossible solution. This man, the chief of the technical department, described the Museo Alessi, the archive, in a perfect way. He said it's an archive of solved and not solved problems, and this is the reason why we usually use it, and it's true. Among the 25,000 objects, the technical department can find samples in order to solve or not solve problems. But at the same time, our activity consists in some traditional activity. We've got activities and services like any other design collections. For example, we've got visit, we've got a loan service. If you would like to organize an exhibition, you can call us and receive the material from our collection. Every year we receive from 30 to 40 loan requests. And the reason is because we've got the material that I show you, we've got the prototypes, we've got the material behind the final objects, while the traditional design museum usually got the final products, the products that we've got at our home, no? And another activity consists of producing exhibition, organizing exhibition. These are some exhibitions that we organized in the past few years. And the last one, and he's still traveling, is Impossible. This exhibition is an exhibition that we produce in collaboration with the Holon Design Museum. Holon is a small city outside Tel Aviv in Israel. And they invited us to organize an exhibition in order to explain to their visitors the work behind an industrial design object. And I suggested them to use never produce objects, because thanks to these objects we were able to explain in a better way our work. Because if we display only products, we can discuss about technical problems or budget problems, cost problems, and that's all. But if we display objects that we decided to not produce, we can talk about other qualities linked to the style, linked to the aesthetic aspects, linked to the emotion. And this is the reason why we organize this exhibition in which we display only prototypes, because we don't have, of course, the objects. I select some, there are 60, but I select few in order to close the discussion about the elements that I mentioned you at the beginning of the speech. This is a coffee maker designed by Dennis Santachiara in 1982. It was completely, the design was completely different from the traditional coffee maker. Alessi decided to stop the project because was afraid that people didn't accept this strange and unusual shape. The shape of the coffee maker is very roots in the tradition, in the feeling of people. And so Alessi was afraid that people didn't accept. It was out of on the other side of the borderline. So we didn't put, but in our archive we've got beautiful sketches and drawings linked to this project. Another was a project of Philip Stark. Was a project, the name was Alessi Mobile. What was the point? Alberto Alessi and Philip Stark thought that the car design is quite boring. It's quite boring because the investment in this field are very, very high. So the car companies usually don't want to take risk. And so the result is that the cars are more or less the same, the design are more or less the same. It's boring. So they decided to try to do the opposite. Stark would like to design a car in a completely free way, and then they try to find a car company able to put in production the Stark's car. Of course, they didn't find any car company interested in the project, but we've got beautiful prototypes. And if you think about the monovolume cars produced a few years after this project, you can imagine that Starks felt something in the air, and unfortunately they didn't find at that time companies. This is another project in which the transgression of technology was in a certain way impossible. What was the project was designed by Greg Lynn, one of the digital architecture exponents. And in his design, do you know Greg Lynn, by the way? However, in his design, there is something natural, organic. However, he designed everything in a digital way. And he designed this beautiful cutlery set. But when we try to translate in a real objects, the real object left the feeling, the likeness of the original. And the only way to respect the project was using titanium. But you can imagine a cutlery set producing titanium. You can imagine the cost. And so we decided to suspend the project because of it was impossible to translate in an economic way the project, we can say in an industrial way, the project of Greg Lynn. This is in a certain way, a funny example. This folding chair was designed by Aldo Rossi. And it was suspended, the project was suspended because during the same period, an Italian design company put in production a very similar chair. It was a coincidence. Sometimes it can happen, because we are sure that Aldo Rossi didn't copy the colleague. And so this project was suspended just for that reason. And some years ago, we've got the same problem. In 2010, we were working on this bottle holder designed by Jacob Wagner, but Ronald for Carter designed the same, not the same. In our archive, we've got the mails that we exchanged with Jacob Wagner, and he said, no, but look at the details of my design is completely different. But yes, it's completely different, but if you see them, of course, if you consider the details, they are completely different. But if you see them, they are very, very close. So we suspended the project. And this is another example elements that we can discuss only with suspended project. This project was designed by Alessandro Mendini, and he invited Alessi and Venini. Venini is a company specialized in glass objects. He invited to produce together a collection of vases made in glass and stainless steel. Stainless steel is our core business, and glass is Venini's core business. And he designed beautiful sketches. If you consider the sketches that we've got in our archive, you can imagine the collection as beautiful collection, bases full of lightness, etc. But when Mendini saw the real prototypes, he found them very far from the expectation. He said, jokingly, he said, but it reminded me of a very fat man with a very, you know, the belt and the stomach out. And so we didn't put in production, not because of technological problems. There were some technological problems linked to the tolerances, but our technical department and the Venini technical department managed to solve them, but only because it was so far from the initial design. And this is one of the last projects, run by Giulio Iacchetti with a group of young designers, Italian young designers. And the idea was that Alessi could started to have in the catalog also file. You know that now in our houses we can have a 3D printer, and every design companies are fronting this new topic and this new technology. And so we started to think that in our analogic catalog we can have a section of digital products. So the idea was that the designers design a pen and Alessi sell the file, and in-house people can print the pen bought, the project of the pen bought. But what happened that the design of this pen was so complicated that our common 3D printer are not right in order to produce them. And the only way was use a professional 3D printer, very, very expensive. Now we don't have, but we think that in the future, this impossible project will be possible. We have to wait that the technology change. If you remember at the beginning, the printer for paper document at the beginning was really expensive, and now are so cheap, and maybe we can imagine that we will have the same. Last topic linked to what I described to my work is about the company museums and archives. And today is the Italian Design Day, so I would like to focus the attention on how you can know the Italian design through the company museums and archives. And in Italy, there is a big and extremely rich design museum, and we can describe this as an eco-museum because it's spread all over the country in various sites, public and private, and among them we've got some company museums and archives. Maybe some of you visited the Fondazione Castiglioni in Milan or the Fondazione Magistretti when the two architects passed away. The sons and the daughters transformed the studio in a museum, and these sites are part of this eco-museum that you can consider if you would like to know the Italian design. But I would like to talk about the company museums and archives, and I would like to tell you what I anticipated before, that you can find interesting documents about design also in unexpected sites. For example, at the Barilla archive. This is the project of a kind of pasta designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro. Giorgetto Giugiaro is a car designer, and he designed this beautiful and very aerodynamic kind of pasta, and the name was Marilla. The Marilla pasta would be a pasta that you can use with every kind of sauce. You know that it depends on the sauce. You can use a kind of pasta. For Italian people, it's very important. For example, with tomato, which kind of pasta? Okay. However, okay, this was a flop. This was a flop, but because of the function. Because what happened that this part remained not very well cooked during like the butterfly. You know the butterfly, the pasta butterfly in the middle remained not very well cooked, and the same. This was ready when this part wasn't ready. So it was a flop because this is important. The pasta must be ready at the same time in the same in all the parts. However, talking about in the same archive. Sorry. Okay. In the same archive, we've got interesting document about the graphic design, the history of graphic design. For example, they've got a lot of projects of Roberto Carboni. Roberto Carboni is one of the father of Italian graphic design. For example, he designed the first packaging for Pasta Barilla, and he was in charge of many communication campaigns run by Barilla during the 50s. Another unexpected, I think, I presume, a company linked to the design is the Galleria Campari. Since the beginning, Campari was very linked to the Porto design, the Porto Italian design, and more in general with art. For example, the communication of the company and the project of one of the most famous products of Campari was designed by Fortunato De Pero. By Fortunato De Pero. Fortunato De Pero is an exponent of futurism, and 80 years after the invention of the first bottle, Matteo Ragni designed a new version of the famous bottle. But they collaborate with many other designers. For example, in the 90s, Matteo Thun designed these beautiful glasses. Many pubs of Campari are designed by designers. Many are designed by Matteo Ragni. If you will be in Milan, I warmly suggest you to visit Galleria Campari because it's marvelous. It's full of original work of De Pero, and that you can see, it's incredible. Another, Pirelli. Pirelli is very well known for the tire production, but they've got a branch specialized in toys, toys made in rubber, and the art director was Bruno Munari. And for Pirelli, he designed this object. This is one of the most famous and well-known project of Munari, Meo Meo, the cat The name of this cat is Mero Mero, and he designed he ran some projects also for the communication, and also Pirelli is an interesting site if you would like, especially for the graphic, but not only for the graphic, but especially for the graphic. If you would like to know if you would like to approach the Italian graphic design, then the museums and the archives open by design company like Molteni, Ferrari, Zegna, Fendi, Cartel, Alessi, etc. In many of them, you can visit the museum and the archive, and in some cases also the production. So you've got an inside experience of the design, and the experience that they are able to give you is completely different from an experience that you can have in a traditional design museum, because you can see from the inside the work of in this field. For example, if you visit the Molteni Museum, it's not very close to Milan, but it's extremely interesting. Like a campus, they've got an archive, they've got a museum. The layout, the project of the museum is by Jasper Morrison, and the archive is extremely interesting. You can see the original sketches of, for example, Aldo Rossi. Also in our archive, we've got the original sketches of Aldo Rossi. MUMAC is the museum of, opened by Cimbali, is a museum dedicated to the coffee machine, the one that you can find in the bar, in the pubs. And there are, this is, for example, the famous in Italy, the famous machine Pavoni, designed by Gio Ponti, and there are some designed by Castiglioni, Insomari, etc. And and for that reason, many museums and archives opened by design companies usually are visited by students. And I started to talk with my colleague of Molteni, Cartel, and others, and we realized that the same universities that visit us usually go also to them, usually every year, usually during the period of Salone del Mobile. And I realized that we are a sort of grand tour, educational grand tour, and many professors are happy to come with the students and have lecture inside the company. Last year, for example, in Alessi, we started to offer real lessons inside the company. We started to discuss with the professor, and we build up the topics on the basis of the educational needs of the profession. But more or less, all the other museums can provide the same experience. This is a map of the site that I mentioned before, the design site that you can find in Italy. But if you are interested in a particular branch of design, you can also build a visit in Italy focus on your interest. For example, if you are interested in car design, you must go to Emilia-Romagna. You must first visit this website and prepare your visit. Motor Valley is a website in which you can find all the information about the various collections, museums, experience linked to cars and motorbikes that you can have around Bologna or Bologna. because in this area you've got Lamborghini, Ducati, Ferrari, and others. And so if you are interested in that, you can build your visit on the basis of your interest. And the same about fashion. If you are interested in fashion, you can build your tour visiting the Max Mara archive, Fondazione Zegna. In this case, it's a little bit, you have to take 1 month or more because they are, Fondazione Zegna is in the north of Italy, Max Mara in the center, Salvatore Ferragamo is in Florence, so it's not very, they are not very close. However, they are extremely interesting. And again, for example, also if you visit Benetton, the archive of Benetton, at the same time you can see the process behind the product, the communication. You can have an idea about the choral work, because in a company, in a design company, you, of course, the most important part of the work is linked to the product development, the project development, but also the communication is important. In our archive, you can have an idea about the efforts linked to this kind of work. So, this is the end. My only friend. Okay. I like very much this slide. Why? Because I prepared this slide using Instagram. I put the hashtag with the name of some museums, company museums and archives, and I found many photos. And I think that if someone decided to share a picture took in a company museum or archive, we reach our goal. We are able to offer an exciting experience about the Italian design, about our work, our culture, because the Italian industry is linked with art, with design, with technology, with culture. So if you would like to know the Italian culture, of course you have to go to Italy and visit museums, churches, buildings, archaeological sites, but you can have an experience of the contemporary Italian culture also visiting our company museums and archives.